Welcome to our weekly meditation as we've just passed the autumn equinox. And we're continuing with some thoughts around spiritual formation. Richard Rohr, again, our good friend, says that unless we are led, here's the link to contemplation and our meditation, unless we are led to some kind of contemplative practice that continually reveals and changes, I might add, our dualistic, argumentative and biased way of thinking, we won't move into a new stage of life. And by new stage of life, I take that to be, our growth, our ongoing spiritual formation. And so tonight, a little bit more of a focus around our consciousness, our conscious mind, the flow of thoughts, feelings, images, perceptions, and a challenge to us of where is our mental home? Where do we go to? But before that, we come into this moment and we go through our own routine of just adjusting where we're sitting or lying so that we feel comfortable, we feel connected to the chair, to the floor. We place our hands where they can be relaxed. I have my forearms on my thighs. You might have your hands together, you might have your hands open. And either closing your eyes or just lowering your gaze or using the image on the screen. And we always begin by taking 2 deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And you'll hear the sound that I make as I breathe, so feel free to make as much noise as you want. We bring our attention to that breath. So many aspects we can focus on. Maybe you need that attention and focus to ensure that you breathe in through the nose. What do you sense? Do you sense the filling up and the emptying? Do you notice the sound of the air moving in and moving out? Do you notice expansion, sensing the lungs filling, seeing what's going on inside? Use that breath, whatever helps you most to focus so that your attention is fixed there, not distracted. Attention, focus on the breath. Maybe notice that you are becoming more relaxed as you breathe deeply with conscious attention to the breath. Having got into the rhythm now of breathing more slowly, more deeply, think of that breath as being part of something wider and more infinite. Connecting, dare we say, with the infinite love of the universe. using the breath to let go, to leave behind any preoccupations that were in your mind. Breathing in and maybe invoking the word calm as you breathe in. Maybe a mental picture of calm. And on the out breath, letting go anything you're wanting to release. And remembering that breath, wind, spirit in Hebrew all have the same root word of ruach. So that when we breathe in, we can imagine the very Spirit of God, the divine essence. Jesus said, "I will make my home in you, and the Spirit is how I am going to do this." Abiding, remaining, vine and branches. Connected, rooted. I will be with you and within you. The ancient Israelites thought that God dwelt in the temple. That's where they had to go to encounter God. Jesus set himself as the temple, the overlap of heaven and earth. And then later, daringly, Paul says, "Your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, the dwelling place of God." So I wonder, do we make the most of that? Going back to that idea that our consciousness, the flow of thoughts and feelings and images, is it on Jesus or the divine or all that is godly? Or do we get deflected to fear, anger, materialism, greed? Tom Wright, modern theologian, suggests that in the spiritual vacuum we've returned to the old gods. Mars, god of war; Mammon, god of money; Aphrodite, lust. Modern neuroscience tells us that whatever we give our attention to is what we become. Every time we think a thought, it becomes easier to think that thought again. I'm sure you've heard this story, said to be a saying of Sitting Bull, the native Indian chief, but perhaps it's actually an older Cherokee legend, which an older man is teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside me," he said to the boy. "It's a terrible fight between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, guilt, resentment, superiority, and ego. He continued, the other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, empathy, truth, compassion. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, which wolf will win? The older Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. St. Augustine says, consider these two cities, Jerusalem, a vision of peace, and Babylon, called confusion. They are made by two loves, love of God and love of the world. Let each of you ask himself which is his love, and he will know of which city he is a citizen. In this life there are two loves fighting each other in every temptation, love of God and love of the world, and whichever wins draws its lover in its train as by a weight. So for us to contemplate, so I try and distinguish between meditation, which we do in our first interlude of calming and letting go. And then in contemplation, we might bring a bit of focus. So to think, where do our thoughts go? Perhaps when we're standing in a queue somewhere or waiting for something. Maybe just scan back over the last day or 2 days. Any situations, any interactions where you can think where your thoughts went or how you reacted. Because when our minds are idle, the unaided mind tends towards chaos, leaping to the future or to the past, and often leaping to something negative, assuming the worst. Where do our thoughts go, I wonder? Which dog, which wolf do we feed? And how then do we ensure that we feed the good wolf? Paul again, do not be conformed to this, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And this will take practice, won't it? Aiming our consciousness at Jesus or at divine attributes, at beauty, goodness, truth. And this takes practice, yes. Somebody I was listening to yesterday said she is now, I like this, less concerned with what people think and more with loving them well. Another minister on a podcast talked about abiding, as I've got on the screen, and that our first thoughts of the day and our last thoughts of the day, we can have some control over those. We can be quite focused with those. But what about during the day? What about when we're waiting? Do our thoughts go to God or to future and past events? Turning God into a habit. Because actually we are free with what we do with the mind. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of concentration camp, talked about this. How we respond to stimuli. Do we react, or can we pause and control our reactions? And contemplative prayer, which we're practicing on these Monday evenings, is one such practice to develop in this direction, so that we turn God into a habit. A final little story of back in the 19th century in America. An old peasant came into a chapel nearly every day and sat in the quiet. Finally the priest said, "You're a farmer. What are you doing here?" And the farmer replied, "He looks at me, I look at him, and we are happy." And so we take some of those thoughts to our longer period of silence. First of all, a poem on that abiding, that dwelling. I am not there, I am not then, I am nowhere else but here. I am not them, I am not you, I am myself. I rest from doing, need not achieve. I do not ask, I do not need. This is the place for me to be. Here I am. Just that phrase, here I am, can be one way of opening ourselves. And we go in with music from Salt of the Sound, called Dwell Among Us.
And singing and speaking through us.
You dwell among us.
You dwell among us. You dwell among us.
And so we use our silence, maybe just to practice the breathing and the focus there.
Dwell among us. Keep moving and living and breathing in us.
Or follow your thoughts and see if you can let them go.
And singing and speaking through us.
Or perhaps consider ways of turning God into a habit in our daily lives.
You dwell among us. You dwell among us.
Or perhaps even use that line, you dwell among us, just as a mantra in the silence. which will go for about 12 to 15 minutes. Lord, send your Spirit here to work in us and dwell among us. And so we come out of our silence maybe just gently stretching, gently opening our eyes. And a closing thought, less concerned with what people think and more with loving them well. And the prayer from the Methodist Handbook from today, from the 13th century Gertrude of Helfter. Be strength to our hearts, O love most powerful. Be goodness to our taste, O love most sweet. Be life to our souls, O love most dear. Be comfort and support to us, O love most faithful. Be endurance and hope to us, O love most victorious.